So we're just going to start this off. If you could just introduce yourself, where you went to school, what you studied, and then we'll go from there.
Sure, happy to do so. My name's Michele Beasley. I went to Smith College for undergraduate. I went to Georgetown University Law Center for my law degree, and I went to Oxford University for my diploma in organizational leadership.
Wow, that's amazing.
So
You've been to a couple different places. That's awesome.
a couple different places, yeah.
Did you jump from like college to college, or did you have like some time in between?
No, I took some time off after college. I'd had enough of school, and I sort of wanted to do something that didn't require me to have homework every night. So I found work actually to be quite relaxing in that way, because you could go out and do stuff in the evening with friends without homework hanging over your head. And then after a couple of years, I ended up working at a law firm, and my parents strongly encouraged me to go to law school. And I did not like it, but ended up, for a variety of reasons, finishing up. And then I had a year where after graduation, I did a 1-year women's rights fellowship that I was awarded through Georgetown, and worked doing domestic violence clinic, and worked on international women's human rights, and got to do a few humanitarian missions, and wrote some good articles, and had a good time.
That's kick-ass. That's awesome.
It was good. But then my fellowship ran out, of course, as they do. And then I decided I would get a real job practicing law, because I figured, I could always do the not-for-profit and activist work, but at any time. But there was probably a shorter window where people would train me to be a lawyer, which it turns out it was true. So I joined a large law firm in DC. Well, it's a New York firm, but with their office in DC. I was there for several years, and then a partner and I moved to another firm with our practice. I ended up being in large law firms for a dozen years or something. And then I went in-house to Wells Fargo Bank out in California. I'd moved to California at the time from DC, and was there for a while. While with Wells Fargo, I moved back to Boston, which is the area I grew up in. And then after that, I left Wells Fargo and became general counsel at First Wind Energy, which was owner-operator of a fleet of utility-scale wind farms around the country.
So you've been all over the place.
I've been all over the place, and I was a music and African American studies major in college. So and I studied opera and composition. So it was
What? Okay, so studying that, and then how was the transition from college to like your first job? And then how'd you get into law?
Yeah, I mean, the transition actually from college to a job was actually not hard, because I think the undergraduate training was, how do you research, how do you think, how do you write, and all of those are skills you can use anywhere, whatever topic you study. And I'm a very firm believer that a liberal arts college education prepares you to do really anything. Maybe not biochemistry if you haven't studied it, but outside of a few specialized disciplines, I could have gone on to get a biochemistry degree if I'd wanted to, because you have the same study skills and work ethic. For me, law was, going from temp job to temp job. As a recent graduate from college, with no real direction in life other than just to be done with college and move forward. I ended up, as I said, working for 2 different law firms, as a legal secretary and then as a paralegal. And I was semi-interested in it. It's logical and orderly. The type of thinking is very much puzzle solving, which I love puzzles, and it takes a particular kind of mind usually to, of sort of mindset to want to do law in the first place. And when I first started, I thought, well, I'll be a public defender or a prosecutor or something with sort of a more public facing bent. I could be an activist. And I really was looking more at law as a tool of social activism than I was, to make money. unfortunately, as I found out after graduating law school, the price tag was so high that really foreclosed a lot of opportunities for me to be able to do things that didn't make a lot of money. And the loan forgiveness programs for lawyers are, like most of them, complex, useless, hard to get qualified for. You know, so it just seemed that I needed to sort of support myself, pay back all those loans, and, you know, get some, you know, hard training. And I paid a lot of dues for about 5 to 10 years, but came out of it with some really great skill sets. So it was one of these like accidental, organic, what comes next things, where you just do the next thing and then something else shows up and then you do that thing.
Yeah, I think sometimes I know myself, I get so caught up in planning where sometimes I need to not plan and like you said, just do the next thing and see where it goes.
Yeah, I think that got me probably through my mid-30s.
Okay.
And I think that's the point at which I realized that, you know, sort of taking stock, I was not where I wanted to be or doing what I wanted to do. I ended up sort of shifting gears. I became a mother. A single mother by choice. And then I left my law firm practice and went in-house. And, you know, because I sort of got to the point where I wanted to not loathe and despise the people I worked with. I wanted to go to work every day with a smile. So, you know, I think after a certain point, I had to start planning, because I had to start thinking, like, here's where I am now. Where do I want to end up? Like, not when I'm dead, but like end up in like 20, 30 years. Like, what do I want my life to look like? And I did ask myself that question. And I thought, well, okay, here are the things I want to have and to be in that time. So I guess I have to start now. Like, if I want to have a family around me, I probably need to start a family. You know? So there's some things for which there are seasons in your life to be able to do what you do. And I think for a lot of people, you know, our 20s and early 30s are either random, like mine were, or more exploratory. And I think, you know, having sort of locked myself into that student debt problem, I had to be a little more random and opportunistic rather than exploratory. But I think you can sort of end up, frankly, in roughly the same place, irrespective of how you get there.
I love that you like labeled the two, because I feel like that's something a lot of college grads have to decide whether they can go random or they have like the option to be exploratory. And that's where I think like I've had the privilege to be more exploratory. I mean, I have a lot of student loans, but I don't have to pay them just yet. So I'm only supporting myself, you know, no family or anything. So it's like I have the privilege to kind of explore and live frugally, but like see what I want to do.
I think it's important. I really want my children to have that option of saying, here's a thing that I really might love and want to try and am interested in, and then be able to just do it, and without having to worry about, you know, what I think my son referred to as adulting issues.
Yeah.
Use the term. Yeah, so I sort of regret that I didn't have as exploratory a time in that period of my life. I think I wasn't very brave. You know, I think for me as a woman, particularly in working in extraordinarily male-dominated profession and a very male-dominated part of law, which is energy law, I was sort of, you know, swimming against the tide and with a lot of sharks for a long time. And so that makes you very risk averse, I think. And also doesn't give a lot of sort of mind space within which to think more broadly and deeply and sort of out of the box.
So how did you like navigate that and support yourself when you were like going against the tide with a bunch of sharks?
I'm a very good survivor, right? So I'm and a little oblivious, right? So I never really cared much what people thought of me, and sometimes didn't really realize what they thought of me. So that gets you through a bit of the, frankly, pretty overt sexism and discrimination that still is a feature of my profession. and also I was willing to work my rear end off, right? So I would work harder and longer and than anybody else, as I'm sure you have experienced. I'd be twice as good to get half as far. Adage is not incorrect. So, and a lot of the beginning part of my career was just slogging through it, ignoring the BS, and frankly letting a lot of stuff go. But in this last 15 years or so, I sort of became more intentional and about wanting to work with people and do work where I felt I could be myself, that self would be admired and respected and wanted. And so I now have a solo practice. I don't have partners. I don't have a boss to report to other than myself. And so for me, that's been very freeing, because I don't have to put up with that layer of it's actually very oppressive, right? This layer of oppression, literally, that overlays a lot of the energy that you have to push beyond or go forward or do anything. So that was a choice. And it was a choice to leave large firms and the prestige and all the money and go in-house and have a better lifestyle, not work, 15 hours a day, work 8, things like that. But so much of what I've done has been just asking for what I wanted. When I became general counsel, I actually was not allowed to interview for the job because I would never been a general counsel before. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. I have exactly the skill set you guys want, but they wouldn't let me. But there was another job opening. So I applied for that. And they're like, oh, okay, you can come talk to us there. And so I talked to everybody. It was a very small company at the time, because it was a startup. And after I interviewed everybody, I went back to HR and I said, look, I understand you're looking for general counsel, and I think you need somebody who can do this, 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 and this. And I said, I tick all your boxes. Will you consider me? And they said, yes, you do. And we don't know why the headhunter wouldn't send you here. I said, well, they wouldn't send me here because I'd never done it before. And they think I can't, they didn't want to show you anybody who hadn't already been a GC. So it's just like, okay. So they're like, yeah, you got the job.
Nice.
It was the shortest job hunt I've ever done. It took 3 weeks total. I mean, and that included all the interviewing and meeting the board and all this other stuff. So, sometimes you just have to ask and, say, you should consider me because, but I'd done my homework about the company, about that industry, about, exactly what they were looking for in terms of a type of person, and things like that. So I'd sort of done all this work around the edges to see if I could get that. It's not always a successful strategy, but.
That's good though. You get what you ask for. Well,
sometimes you do, but you just have to ask thoughtfully.
Yes, intentionally. So thank you for sharing everything. And
sure.
I feel like I got a lot out of this. And the last question that I want to ask, that I usually ask everybody, is what is like one piece of advice or one lesson that you would want to give yourself back when you were going through this, or that you want to share today?
Yeah, be braver sooner. Take stock, be braver sooner. And I think I wish I'd been more willing to walk earlier. It took me until I hit 40 to be willing to walk, and I ended up allowing like a massive fight with the chair of my department to occur. After which there was no way if I was going to stay, and the firm as a whole was very supportive, but it was a very cathartic moment, and I could have said many of the things I said years earlier, a decade earlier, so yeah. So I think be braver sooner if you can. But as I also teach at BU in a graduate program, one of the things I tell my students when we talk about employment law and employment discrimination is, you have to make a choice. And sometimes your choice is to put up with things for very good reasons. You're supporting someone, you don't have an alternative, you whatever. The reason is, I said, but then you can make other choices at other times. So when I was general counsel, I made my choice then to hire, promote, and give raises to women. and women of color,
Mhm.
and, you know, help other women get promoted, and, you know, do that work for other people and be the mentor that I had always wanted.
Mhm.
So
Thank you for being awesome and sharing your
oh.
awesomeness with us today.